call this meeting of the Underhill Planning Commission on October 19th to order. Are there any additions to the agenda? I have a super brief one, which is, I think I've been chairperson for 2 years and I'm happy to keep doing it, but just heads up before the end of the year, because it's a couple of months. If anyone else is interested, please let everyone know. I mean, like I said, I'm happy to keep doing it, but if someone else would like to do it, just.
I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
I think you are too. I think you should
Short
keep
time I've
it.
been on board.
Should we vote now? I vote.
Yeah.
They're like, we found a sucker and we're not letting him go. I have the only other, was there any other additions to the agenda? Nope. Public comment, there's no public here, which takes us to the approval. So we actually have a couple things to do on minutes.
So you have the October 5th minutes right there that I don't think were circulated to you, but were they? No?
No.
Okay. So if you want to read those for a second, those are from the last meeting, most fresh. And
Do we have a quorum for that? We do, right?
Yeah, because I was not there. All you were there though.
Well, these were
I read them.
These were online, yeah.
these are online, but they weren't circulated to you, but
Yeah.
but there are the copies there if you want to read them over.
And we're gonna approve some other minutes too, right, Brett? Or am I misquoting? I thought
Let's
Amanda.
get this one done.
Oh, do this one first on its
Yeah,
own?
get it done on its own. Yeah,
Oh, wait.
Each one separately.
We're about to vote on approving the October 5th minutes, Sandy, so I was stalling for a second. Can I get a motion to approve the October 5th minutes? Thank you, Tim. Second. David, all in favor?
Wait, you can't motion, you weren't here.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, we have enough.
Tim wasn't there. Sorry. Thank you,
Sorry,
Carolyn.
Tim.
I read.
Someone else? Carolyn, you wanna?
I'll
Carolyn,
motion.
David?
Yeah.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Carolyn.
Okay, on October 2nd, Brian circulated minutes, a bunch of minutes. The first, and you all had copies, digital copies. First that needs to be considered and approved are the October 5th minutes. I'm just going to give these to sign, but
We just did
you-
those. We just did those. So we just
Oh,
did October 5th, so we're good.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll start with the,
It was the quorum problem that we had at the last.
yeah, but hang on a minute.
Yeah.
We're going to take them one at a time.
Oh, okay.
The other is the September 21st minutes, and it looks like
Good.
we need 5 for a quorum.
Yes. All right.
I wasn't here for that, so.
Yeah, so you have a quorum for that.
Okay. So the only one who wasn't here was Roy. So can I get a motion to approve the September 21st minutes? Tim? David, second. All in favor? Unanimous.
Just sign those and give them back to me like you did with the, so the October,
This says draft. Do you want me
Yeah.
to sign these?
Give me
Or-
these.
Oh, do that one.
okay, I'll take the draft back. This is the September 7th.
Roy wasn't here, Carolyn wasn't here, so can someone else make a motion to approve the September 7th minutes? Tim? Second, David? All in favor? Aye.
Last one way back from July 6th.
Okay. Bart and Carolyn, oh no, Bart was here. Oh, it says, it just said Carolyn was here and go to meeting. So everyone but Bart. Can I get a motion to approve the July 6th minutes? Carolyn? David? Sorry, Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
These you've already approved.
I just need to sign
They
them.
just need to be signed because we had the watermark on them last time.
I love your signature.
Yeah, easy to forge. Oh, oops, there's some.
John
Said she'd be
Hancock
a
would be
little-
appalled.
He would be appalled. On many levels, probably work.
Easy to forge, impossible to understand.
So that catches you up.
Thank you, Brad.
Before you get started, there was a correspondence. If you want to do that, I don't see you have a place for correspondence.
Is that something we should have on every meeting?
No, it's just in case something pops up, but it's
Sort of like public comment.
sort of like public comment, but this is annual, it's addressed to you, but it's the Mont Mansfield, it's the towers, the communication towers. And every year, since it's under Act 250 and we're in a butter interested party, they're just notifying you that it's been tested and there is no issues, but you can pass it around.
This is the cell phone tower?
Many towers that are up there,
Oh.
the State Police Tower,
all the ones up
all the
top,
towers
yeah.
on the.
I would disagree that they're working fine because I have no cell phone reception. by my
Well,
house.
I mean, they're not melting your brain, so
Okay, thank you, Brad.
I'm just gonna put, okay. So minutes, let's keep track of time here for Mont Mansfield. 7.
USB reader.
So it's 7 if you wanna go to the, did you want me to put that PowerPoint up on the
It's up
screen?
to you.
Okay.
Some people weren't here last.
Oh, okay. We can give it a whirl. Just gotta see if I can find it here.
The debrief.
Forwarded it to myself, because I usually run all DRB planning stuff through Nick's email still. I know it's confusing to everybody, but, and then I try to keep my town administrator stuff over there. But actually, I'm gonna not do that. I'm gonna do some desktop.
Please gonna be late.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so I think, where is it there? I opened it up. Back. Okay.
All right, well,
Take us through it, Sandy. Do you want me to?
So what we had, what we did last time was go through this PowerPoint, which I think I forwarded to everybody, hopefully, to look at what we already have in the town plan and other work that Brad is, a lot of it he's in charge of, related to flood resiliency. So a lot of what is in the climate action plan is also our strategies that we have in the town plan. So it makes sense to go over these and make sure we understand what they are. And then we could take some actions on some of these town plan issues, which would help bring us a little better in line with flood resiliency stuff. We went over a number of different programs, and each one is a little interesting and unique and difficult to understand. And I think Brad knows about all of them. So I thought it would be helpful if he was here today to give us some more information about these different projects and what the status is. Some of them are underway, some of them
Pretty old.
pretty old. And it might give us a better idea of where we're at and what we might want to do in the future. So that's sort of my introduction. And I thought what you could do, Brad, is to work through some of the ones that we didn't quite understand very well or know that you're working on.
Right. So I guess first on Sandy's list is a stormwater. It's stormwater master plan, really. It's I don't think it's a management plan, but you're talking about the stormwater master plan of 2018.
Yes.
That identified the certain areas.
Mhm.
So there was a bunch of areas. Basically, it's based on impervious surfaces. So Underhill, we're pretty small. We don't have a whole lot of impervious soils or surfaces, but the town hall is one of them. The fire station is another. St. Thomas Church, I believe the parking lot up at the old Maple Leaf Farm.
There is a list on there.
Yeah, I'm trying to go from memory. Where's the list? Is it on?
So these are all basically parking lots,
You got it.
large.
Parking lots, impervious surfaces, large,
I think one more.
more down.
There.
There we go.
So those are the roads, and then the next one are the other.
Okay, so here's the ones that I'm thinking about. So the Underhill Post Office, Vegetative Swale, Harvest Run. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know Harvest Run was actually part of that. Ditch swale improvements, floodplain enhancement. Anyway, we did, these aren't really, some of it's flood resiliency, but most of it is water quality, right? So it's like making sure phosphorus and stormwater runoff doesn't go directly discharging into the brook. That's the case for the central school. That's the case for Maple Leaf Farms, case for this parking lot, the case for the fire department, St. Thomas Church, most all of these.
What's the crude road in Pleasant Valley?
Underground storage infiltration. So that would be probably the storm system we have. There's a current storm system there with underground piping and catch basins. It's probably that.
Okay.
Park Street, same thing. We've done some work. So if we wanted to go through Underhill Central, again, if we look at this like a water quality issue, these are a drop in the bucket to the real elephant in the room, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The elephant in the rooms are town highways and our MRGP work.
What's MRGP? Sorry.
So municipal roads general permit. So basically it's, we have these 100-meter segments and they're basically segments because they're hydrologically connected to a stream.
Yeah.
And they're usually, they're within close proximity to the stream, the road, the ditch and the drainage infrastructure on the road. If sediment were to run in those ditches would get into the brook. If it didn't, if stormwater management practices were not in place. And then they're prioritized based on grade, like steepness.
So when they
How
redid
fast
Western
they-
Road, was that?
That was those. So those were 5 very high priority segments.
Okay.
So at that time, during the municipal roads general permit, which we have to abide by, we were under a deadline of, I believe it was 2025 to get all maybe 2027 to get all very high priority segments complete or up to code. So that was a better back roads project. So we did get some grant funding, but we spent a lot of money to bring all those segments into compliance.
And this was state mandated.
Yeah, exactly. Clean water. The EPA is basically the feds have come down hard on the state. We're not doing enough to keep the lake clean. And phosphorus is just rampant, out of control. But what's so sad, not to go on a tangent, but we look at, we're micromanaging our roads and all these little things, and then look what just happened this summer.
Oh, the flood.
I mean, it's discouraging because, again, it's just a little speck what we're doing compared to what happened. So it's kind of a bummer, but
You mean like from a flood that floods a big floodplain and has.
well, look at all the
crops
crap.
growing on
Look at all the crap that went into the lake.
Sewage treatment.
The sewage treatment,
Yeah.
the chemicals, you name it.
Yeah.
And here we are trying to manage a little bit of sediment going into our ditches.
From under
Right,
Hill
going
Central
into
School.
the- Right, but but nonetheless, it's all
Are you
important.
thinking that there should be a bigger look at the road system rather than, just looking at it from stormwater? It should be like, okay, where's it going to flood?
Yeah, so I look at it all myself. And when we're doing MRGP work, well, let's finish off with these stormwater master plan, but it's like, so these things, again, I think, we did a little project here. The rain garden hasn't been very successful. It's full of weeds. But once we get the right vegetation growing in there, the idea was to capture all the stormwater runoff from the parking lot. We repaved the parking lot. It's going into the rain garden. So that's a good thing. It's not going to wash down the road and go into the Mill Brook. Same goes for like the St. Thomas Church. I don't really see a big problem over there with, probably if you're looking at, they salt it in the winter. You want to capture that salt and put it in some sort of filtration storm system would be great. But it'd be nice to peck away at some of these things. Like the fire department would probably be the next one I would want to tackle. And a lot of these have preliminary designs already. Like people come in and looked at it and kind of brainstorm some ideas on how we could fix it. But it all costs money, right? So you usually chase grant money to do projects like this.
So is salt the only problem?
No, it's not salt necessarily, it was sediment, right? So
Yeah.
sediment, and it took me a while to wrap my head around phosphorus, but phosphorus, it's in everything, it's like we're phosphorus rich. So phosphorus, it's all about phosphorus credits and keeping phosphorus out of our waterways.
So it's in the soil.
It's in the soil, it's in sediment.
It's a manure.
Well, definitely in manure.
Yeah.
Tim sent me an interesting article that said one of the major sources of phosphorus into the lake was erosion
Right.
off of all the dirt roads.
So that's what,
Well,
I
don't
wonder.
scientifically know.
But then you look at the event that just happened, right?
Yeah.
Look at all of that.
Yeah.
That went down into the lake. It's just mind blowing. But right, we're trying to. So I brought an example if we want to just keep on MRGP work for now. But this, in my mind, is the most important thing we can be doing in our community is improving our drainage infrastructure, and then at the same time being mindful of the drainage areas and making sure our structures, our culverts, our infrastructure is beefed up enough to take a 100-year flood, right? That's all we can do is design the 100-year flood. That's all any hydraulic study for a culvert, they're looking at a 100-year flood event. What we had was a 500-year flood event in Cambridge, I would say. But
How did they define a 100-year flood?
The ones we have every several years.
no, it's based on it's based on a model, right? And again, and something else I wanted to touch on is I think we're starting to lose touch. What really I noticed, you'll notice it in weather, right? So everybody's a weather forecaster now. You notice that, and I saw it I was at a press conference last winter. It was during that Christmas Eve storm we had with the wind, and the governor was on the part of the conference I was on, and he was asking some questions, and I was looking at the National Weather Service forecast, and the conference took place at the National Weather Service in Albany. And the governor was definitely looking at different weather than the National Weather Service was talking about. You could tell it was like, you've got all these, every radio station, every TV station talks different weather, right? And I think we need to be really cautious about following these weather people that don't have a track record like NOAA. I mean, you look at this last event, the big storms that were coming up and it hit the coast, and all the weather people were saying, oh, we're going to get high winds, we're going to have like inches and inches of rain. And yes, we had some rain, but NOAA, meanwhile, is always constant, consistent. It's something to be mindful in the future is getting sucked into the drama, because all they want to do is like promote weather to be something it's not, right? Listen to NOAA. NOAA's connected to FEMA. Listen to FEMA. There's other people making flood predictions. Like, what's that company that, it's called like Flood Map or something.com. You can like Google your property, and they're trying to use models based on climate change to see if you're going to flood or not. Sorry, they're not the FEMA. FEMA's been doing this work forever, and FEMA was a very, very well-run organization right up until 9/11 happened, and they got combined with Homeland Security. That's when FEMA really took. It's too bad, because then all of the maps, the 2011 maps that we have, were done by subcontractors. They weren't done by FEMA. All the old maps were done by FEMA. But onto that, just your second thing was flood hazard areas of Vermont, and I looked at this website, this Vermont Flood Ready Atlas, and for the untrained person or for the layperson, I think it's probably a cool little resource to do, but I didn't find there's not enough tools in there for me. I go, I'm registered with FEMA because I used to do applications all the time with them in my surveying. So I get updates from them all the time. I use the FEMA Map Center because I have a lot more tools. I can see the current firms, I can see historic firms, I can see letters of map amendment. And then I'd use another resource like, well, for Underhill, for example, I have a map that has all the culverts, all the parcels, all the roads, all the different levels of imagery. I noticed on this map, it only had like the recent imagery. It's nice to go back and look at all the past imagery. And we've got digital imagery all the way back to 95, maybe 97. So it's cool to see how things change. But what was your point with that?
Well, my point is this group doesn't know what you know.
Okay, yeah.
And what we're trying to do is learn what.
We could do a quick, if you guys wanted to do a quick thing about like FEMA maps and stuff and know how to, easily navigate. It's really simple. The FEMA Map Center is very friendly. And I think it would be nice to understand, and I'd be more than happy to do that.
Sure. At a later date, you mean? Or?
Yeah,
at a later date. That'd be great.
We can just do a little tune up on it. VT culverts is another great thing. The resource atlas, the ANR resource atlas, that's probably the best. It's got everything in there, right? you know, and again, it kind of segues into the environmental assessment for the village, but we talk about, you know, you can see just about any layer imaginable, brownfields, hazardous waste.
You can see
anything.
soil type on
Any,
it too, right?
so all the soil types,
That's on the A&R.
on the A&R Atlas. Yeah, we could do a, also do, and that's got all the FEMA data as well.
So you could go on that, is that like, what's that, Vermont Parcel Finder or whatever it is, where you can see?
No, that's different from
Different.
this.
But you can go on
That's the parcel
A&R,
data.
but you can go on the A&R website and you can look at those maps.
Yes,
Anybody can.
yeah, it's overlays, so it's all based on the parcel data, and you can see.
It
different
overlays the
imagery.
parcel so you know where you are relative.
Yeah, it's,
More or less.
yeah, more or less.
Yeah, I find it difficult. I would love a 5-minute primer on, like, I just find it difficult to turn the layers on and off as a layperson and like figure out exactly what I'm looking
It's
at.
very, very Microsoft driven. So if you're a Mac guy, it's
Oh, yeah.
a Mac person. It's not gonna.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I have 2 quick questions, Brett. Sorry.
Yep.
So what did you say MRGP stood for?
so municipal roads general permit,
And that's
and
from the
it's-
state?
right? And it's based on the road erosion inventory. So back in 18, I think it was, we had a road erosion inventory. And basically the first thing was to identify the segments of roads that were hydraulically connected to a water source.
Mhm.
Then once they identified those, they broke them into 100-meter segments.
Okay.
So now we got like 500 segments, right? And then they took the 500 segments and actually used like a matrix and categorized them. Did they meet? Were they complying? Did they not meet? What was wrong with them? And then they gave them categories like does not meet, partially meets, high priority, very high priority.
When you say hydraulically connected, you mean the ditch on the side of the road runs right into a
Water.
stream?
So
It's
water,
close to
water
a
from the
stream.
roadway would run into a water source.
Okay, so you're trying to designate the ones that are the closest to the water source.
Right.
basically.
Well, like if you've got a road like, you know, yeah, you get up on a hill somewhere and it's
Like
even if the
Stevensville.
water ran,
Yeah, I just-
even if the water ran somewhere, it's not going to go into a waterway.
Right.
Well, it would eventually get into a waterway, but we're looking at what's directly in contact. And I'll just pass these around. And you can see, look at the picture. It says before, and then after. This is a project we just did. Just pass that around. I'll pass another one. This is the same thing before. And look at the before pictures and look at the road edges, look at the sediment. See, there's no ditches. There's no watershed off one side. There's these huge trees that are right against the road. And you'll see it's very clear.
Where are you at in addressing all of those road segments? Are you know, it sounded like you've done all the highest priority ones.
No, we're still, so this is where it gets tricky. So every 5 years, we need to reevaluate all the segments. So I think my predecessor, had a lot on his plate and the program was just new. So I don't think he really fully understood what it was all about, but I've got a super good handle on it. Such a good handle that the state came out and did a workshop out here for the new
Oh, good.
inventory. So I'd say we're on track big time because it's all about applying for 2 types of grants, Better Back Roads grants. And I applied for one last winter, got a $75,000 grant to do just a little section on this English settlement. And then the grants and aid program, and that's free money every year. All you got to do is apply.
Which one is that?
The grants and aid, it's called.
How much is in the town budget every year for this typically?
Well, we have, it takes, so basically what we'll do, like we're getting into budget season this year, right? So we know we already have a grant to do the middle section of this road, which is really crazy. It'd be great to take a field trip up there sometime and you'd really get an understanding
Where's that?
of what it's about. Lower English.
Oh, I've ridden past it.
So, but there's a huge cross culvert that's on a steep angle with the road. It's around 90 feet long. It's about
Where is it?
It's just before you get to where the road, the class 4
Yeah,
starts.
at the very top
Very-
of Lower English.
Almost at the very top, just before it turns into the single lane. But there's a really steep culvert on a skew. It's 4 feet in diameter roughly. So we had, through regional planning, we were able to use a consulting group to give us a hydraulic study. So we determined that the culvert actually needs to be 70, it needs to be an arch culvert. So now it's going to be 6 feet wide by 4 feet tall. So it's going to pretty much double the capacity it had.
Wow.
So then we applied for the Better Back Roads grant. And the benefit with that grant is there's always a match with a grant, right? So you get a certain amount of money, but you have a match. So the match, we can use our employees' time and our trucks and our equipment for the match. So we'd be out doing work anyway. This way, like the part of this Better Back Roads is like, I think the state was like 56,000. So the culvert's going to cost us like 18 grand. So the culvert will be paid, the stone will be paid, and any subcontractors we need, like to pour a head wall at the top, will be paid. So after this is done, this took 2 grants in 2 years to finish, but it's 3 very high priority segments that are totally meet the stormwater and the sediment part of it, but yet are also armored up enough to handle a 100-year event, hopefully. You can tell, like, there's a classic example. No ditch, no ditch, trees on the roadside. This is just, winter sand stacking up, runs down the road, jumps in the culvert. Now, you've pushed all those trees back. We dug this ditch, we put that material on this side. Now you have nice sheet flow of grass growing. There's a brook right here, by the way. Main headwaters coming down into the Browns River, which would lead you to the Browns River geomorphic, assessment. That was an old assessment done in 2005, but, they addressed, were the headwaters of the Lamoille watershed. This is it. So what happens on these roads, I think, is pretty important. And if we want to keep our roads long-term, that's kind of stuff we need to be doing.
So all the work they've done so far is work that is at the top of the list, basically. That
Right,
needs
well,
to- like the highest priority.
Exactly. So go for the steepest roads because they have the ditches that erode, right? So, and those are the ones that wash out in a flood and contribute more sediment to the brooks. So get those cleaned up, get a lot of stone in the ditch, get the road crowned. Now you've solved the sediment problem and you've hoped it'll last in a flood. So, and then increase your culverts all the time, but you can only increase a culvert so big, right? First of all, you've only got enough depth in the road. And then, we typically, all our minimum culvert size is 18, but most of the cross culverts we put in are 24 to 36. So, what else did you
So
have?
this summer you had to reevaluate all the roads?
Right. So luckily we had Chittenden County Regional Planning had 2 interns and they came out and
That's
did
what you
a
did.
lot of the work. And then Mike and Kurt with the infrastructure committee, they're a big part of this too. The highway infrastructure committee, they're always looking long-term about, how are our big structures doing? Like Bridge 7 right now, the one down by your house, Brian, down by Dean Road that is ready to go into the river. It's shot. That's why we posted it. Problem is, we're just a really small town, you know, small town with not a huge grand list like Cambridge or Jericho. But I think if we're smart about what we do, you know, luckily we can do a lot ourselves. You know, you could never sub this work out. If you subbed out this work, what they did this summer, there would be your whole highway budget. You know? So we should be thankful we've got people that got enough skill to do that kind of work. But there's this transportation resilience planning tool you touched on, and I knew a little bit about that. I haven't touched it, but what it is, I think, is that it looks at your culvert data, I think, and it looks at the watershed, and it'll tell you whether you should upsize that culvert or if it's adequate. Does that sound right?
Sort of. I think Kurt is getting trained on that,
Yeah.
and I think the idea is he'll come talk to us after he knows how to use it, but it uses the size of the watershed to then look at, okay, which streams are going to, which road segments are going to be affected by a 10-year flood, a 50-year flood, a 100-year flood. And then, you know, you can really look around the town and say, oh, that's going to be a problem because there's no alternate routes or, you know, those sort of things. It just is a planning tool. And it has all kinds of information, like you're saying, about how to resolve some of the issues. And that, I think, is what Kurt's finding useful.
Yeah. Again, all this stuff's only as good as the data that's in it. And unfortunately, our culvert data, which was state of the art at one time, needs updating.
Mm-hmm.
We need to kind of reevaluate, look at all that. If you go on to VT culverts, you can see where all the culverts are, and they're not quite in the right place. No different than any of this data, but the more fine-tuned you can get your data, the better your results are going to be. But I can just tell you, every flood, I've been through two FEMA events when I was on the select board, 2 in a row, 11 and 13, got slammed both times. And Bart can tell you, look at his driveway up there. That was incredible, by the way. But they all come off a little different. You know what I mean? Sometimes you might have a beaver fawn involved. Sometimes it might be a flash flood. Sometimes it might be a saturating flood. I think it's really hard to predict what you're going to get. Is there snow on the ground? Is the ground frozen? All of that changes what it could be. The beaver ponds played a huge role in the 13 event. That's what took out the Silly Hill Roadhouse. But so we're currently in another flood study to redo the maps again.
So that's a floodplain, or is it flood hazard?
No, floodplain, which is the same thing.
Floodplain.
A flood hazard is the floodplain. So flood hazard area equals floodplain or
Okay.
floodway.
They aren't different.
No, they're not different. Flood hazard area is basically the 100-year flood or the floodway.
So you're remapping that this summer, or?
No, they've been working on it. I went to a kickoff party back when Brian was here up in Johnson, because I went through it with the town in 2011. And again, like I said, FEMA wasn't in control of the mapping anymore. Now we've got a contractor named CDM Smith. They're going to do the same work again. And I'll give you a prime example. When the 2011 maps came out, the Silly Hill Road house on Silly Hill and 15, they took that out of the floodplain. I think it was just a total mistake. They didn't run the floodplain all the way
That
down.
old farmhouse that
That got taken out.
finally got taken out.
So 2011, the old historic firms from 83 had it in the floodplain, which I agreed it was. And the new maps in 2011 took it out. So the bank notifies the homeowners, oh, you don't need flood insurance anymore if you want to save some money. Drop their flood insurance. And their house gets taken out. And in order to get a FEMA buyout, you need to be in the floodplain. So now they're not in the floodplain. So that consumed months of my life. I went to Leahy's office. They pulled I don't say pulled some strings, but we did some hydro analysis and basically proved that the old map was still good. So it wasn't anything, it was all in the up and up, but it took a lot of resources to get them their money. And the problem is, if the contractor doing that work to begin with you don't want to say it's a mistake, but had overlooked that, we wouldn't have been in that situation. And then I saw other areas where they had floodplain where it had no business being. Like, do you know where Sue Kucero's driveway is?
Yeah.
They had it up on the side of the bank up there, like the Millbrook would come up there. And I'm like, we'd all be in big trouble if that happened, So I'm like, what are you doing here? It seems like you just have a lot of people in cubicles cranking out digital data that don't know what they're looking at.
Because on poor Silly Hill Road that house had been going away for.
Yeah, but this was a Beaver Pond event. The Beaver
Yeah.
Pond broke, supercharged the brook.
Yeah.
And then you've got the creek that flows very, just meanders, and that backed up. Couldn't take it all because it was already full.
Okay.
So it was a combination of a lot of things, but
So,
anyway, back on track to something.
well, I wanted to follow through with the FEMA stuff because I don't understand a lot of that. So the town has some sort of a rating, the ERAF, which I forget what it stands for.
Yeah,
FEMA rating?
What is
Is that
Emergency-
the FEMA rating?
Yeah,
emergency relief and assistance. Fund
right.
Rating, yeah.
So I think what that means is that, if there is a flood event like over there at Silly Hill Road, then the town gets reimbursed by FEMA at a rate of 12.5%. Is that how that works?
Yeah,
There's
that-
3 rankings depending on
Right.
how much you do or something.
Exactly. Like if you don't, for example, if we didn't have a local emergency management plan in place, we would lose a percentage of the funding, but we always have one in place.
Uh-huh.
So we renew that every year. But if you didn't have that and a FEMA event happened, you wouldn't get a 10% state match. So yeah, FEMA jumps in with 12.5. Then the FEMA gives the state money, and then the money comes to us. What else is there? There's also,
Wasn't there something we could do to increase that to 19?
Yeah, so I think if you have a river corridor management plan, then that percentage can be increased to, was it 17?
17.5.
Yeah.
which we have.
But it's
No,
not
I don't
up to
think we're
date
in
though,
that.
is it? Or is it up to date?
I thought we had.
I don't
I
think
think
we
we're the
have
second
one,
one.
because we don't have a river corridor management plan.
But we protect the riparian areas in our land use regulations. No development allowed within 100 feet of like the Browns or the Millbrook or.
Okay, maybe I don't know what a river corridor management plan is, but we don't have any document
Right,
that has
says
that name.
Okay.
And it's something that's in our town plan to do, was to create one. And I don't know what's involved in that, and I thought maybe we could get someone from the state program to talk to us about
Yep.
what would that entail. And if so, then we could actually increase the amount of
I think
reimbursement.
things are gonna change the way they're talking about though now, so like the town, the municipality of Underhill participates in the flood insurance program, National Flood Insurance Program, right? So that allows people to buy flood insurance. And in doing that, we need to regulate the floodplain. So that's in our bylaws, regulating the floodplain. There's a whole section on it, right? What the state is really concerned with now, you have so many rural towns that are supposed to be, so let's take Cambridge, for example. They don't have any zoning, right? So there's no way for them to control the floodplain. But if you're doing any work in the floodplain, it has to go through a floodplain board of adjustment. So they actually have a reviewing body that looks at someone has to apply, they have certain rules about construction in the floodplain.
This is if you don't have zoning.
Right, so if you don't have zoning, you
Yeah, if you
need
don't, then
some
the
sort
state
of,
steps in and says, we're gonna regulate it.
well,
You're not regulating it.
well, no, so even if your municipality doesn't have zoning, you still have to have some sort of floodplain regulation.
Yeah.
I think you're on the hook for that.
Okay.
Cambridge does, but they don't, since they don't have zoning, people don't apply for building permits. They're just slapping up stuff in the floodplain. So the state is really concerned, I think, based on what just happened. All these structures in the floodplain, and they're like, what the hell is going on? Where did all these come from? They shouldn't be here. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but if you go into Jeffersonville and look along the river, you could see quite a few of them, And
Well, you need a permit in Cambridge now, a building permit.
no, you don't need, you need a flood board of adjustment decision.
No, you need
Basically.
an actual building permit if you're building anything in Cambridge. You go to the town hall.
No.
Yeah, you see them posted. I know somebody who just built a house over there. You had to get a permit.
No, in the floodplain, you're saying.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, there's no building permit, there's no zoning in Cambridge. There's no building.
But you need to
permit.
get a building permit.
No, you don't. I was the administrative officer there for just a year ago, 2 years ago, I guess. No, there's
Okay,
no.
well, I mean,
no.
I've seen them in town and
You were seeing those for subdivisions, okay? So they have a development review board. If you're gonna subdivide your property, Cambridge has subdivision regulations. They don't have building permits. You could build a house there tomorrow. Build a house there tomorrow, build a barn there tomorrow, do whatever you want. If it's in the floodplain, then you need a permit.
Or if you're subdividing your property.
No, the subdivision permit is just for the subdivision. Once the lots are created, people can just start building houses, as long as they have a wastewater plan.
But you need a permit for the subdivision?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
but not to build the home
Right.
or the barn or anything
Right.
for that matter.
Yeah.
You go right up to the line, do whatever you want. But however, if it's in the floodplain, it needs a special permit. So that's the way the state says, okay, you're going to participate in the flood insurance program. Well, you're going to have to regulate the floodplain. Even though you don't have zoning or building permits, you still need to do that.
So
You see the P signs everywhere. That's subdivision. I used to put them up. Where are you referring to? Just so we
like
can-
Wiley's house, and there's another one on Iron Gate Road that somebody's getting ready to build. They have a Z, the building permit. It just says new
What?
home, new home.
Get out of here,
construction.
really?
I mean, I know Wiley got a permit. He had to get a building permit.
No, he didn't.
He could build his house wherever he wanted.
Yeah, because
Well,
I was
I mean, I
the
don't know.
I was
I
the
see the
administrative
sign.
officer at the time, and he asked me if he needed a permit. I said, no, there's no building permits in Cambridge. So but I'm just trying to I'm wondering if they did something. I can't imagine, but I haven't heard about it. Interesting.
So now in
Back to floodplain.
Underhill, my understanding is we're in the 12.5% level of the FEMA agreement or contract, whatever that is.
Right.
And if we go up to a 17.5%, which is the river corridor, I think that you're talking about, that means that the property owners along the river Browns River are going to be more restricted in their use of their land than they are with the 12.5% level.
Possibly, but they're
Like,
pretty restricted
Paul-
already
Well,
because,
Paul Chamberlain's, use of the areas closer to the brook, for instance, that would be a spot probably at that 17.5% level. The more restricted would say, no, you can't do that.
That's a funding thing. If we were to do this river study, corridor study, the FEMA would reimburse us 17% instead of 12.5%. Is that right?
If
Is that how you
there's a-
understand?
yeah.
If there's an event,
Yeah,
like
right,
if there's
exactly.
a flood, they give us 17% instead
Yeah.
of 12.5% or whatever it is. So
Right.
it's
But
nothing to
that's-
do with with the
Well,
regulations.
so
Well,
we've
yes,
got
you are
FEMA
restricted.
buyout
If you go
happening right
along
now.
with 17.5%,
And just
then you
select-
agree to regulate it in a more strict fashion than with the 12.5%. That's my understanding. If you're going to
Yeah.
check into the greater funding from the feds, then you're going to have to be more restrictive. It's kind of common sense for that.
I have
But
no idea.
so, well, I'll give you
I
an
think that's my
example.
understanding.
So we're in the middle of trying to finish a FEMA buyout, which I'm hoping going to have some information on tomorrow. But that's 100%. We're getting covered 100%, all costs.
And
So
do
what is
you
that?
have to apply
Yeah.
for those?
Yeah.
And what do the homeowners get then?
So the homeowner is going to get 100% of the appraised value, which is very different from, so I've been through 2 FEMA buyouts now. The one on Silly Hill, where they actually had a 20% match. So you get a separate appraisal, real estate appraiser comes in, appraises the property fair market value. They make that offer to the landowner. They can take it or not. They can back out at any moment of this procedure, even though we've got a lot of time and money invested into it. But there's incentives now where we're actually still using mitigation money. And that's what we're talking about. When these FEMA events happen, there's all this mitigation money put aside to try and make things better. And removing homes is one of them. Creating floodplain is one of them. So we're still working, this FEMA buyout that we're working on now is on Irene mitigation money still. So we're
Wow.
still spending money from Irene.
So if this buyout occurred, then the homeowner gets paid and then the house would literally be
It
removed?
has to be destroyed.
And then it would become part of this
Then-
natural floodplain.
Exactly, and the town owns it. So it become town property, never to be developed, and remain. And that's what we need to, start thinking about. And I think that's what the state's gonna be thinking about. I mean, this event was big enough, I would be just like, no more we're not rebuilding here. We're just buying these people out and we're gonna start restoring floodplain.
What do they do, not to go off track, but this is interesting. I mean, what do you do with like, a lot of the small towns in Vermont were literally built next to
Yeah.
rivers, like, I
Under the
mean,
center?
how about downtown
Yeah,
Montpelier?
Yeah,
It's like, what do you start?
Johnson.
yeah.
Johnson, I saw Sterling Market's not gonna rebuild.
Right.
It's like, what do you start to do with all of those properties?
Stop sharing this thing for a moment because we're off the.
There's something like 12 structures that are in the floodplains right now in Underhill?
In Underhill, I'd like to, I think
Is the town
I'm not sure
trying
about
to buy out all of those places?
no, because there needs to have been damage in the past. Right, I'm not sure about that 12 number, I think that's super inflated, because somebody said that once and I
It was
checked.
on some chart that I saw.
Yeah, I know.
So
And
is this the Browns River floodplain?
No, this particular buyout's on the Roaring Brook,
Yeah.
which is a zone A. So the different types of flood hazard areas, that's what we call them, flood hazard areas, different types. There's a zone AE, which I'll just use for example, there are different variations of it. That's the Browns River. So they know what the base flood elevation is. They know what the 100-year elevation is. So if you were, basically you could determine where you are along the river, use these special profiles and determine what your flood elevation is going to be.
So what,
But in a zone A, like the Roaring Brook, there's not enough of a study, so they just kind of show a fluvian area where it could possibly flood, but they don't know exactly.
so the Browns River and the floodplain there, you know, what's the history of the Browns River itself coming over the banks and flooding the
Plenty of times.
floodplain?
Plenty of times. It's different.
Really?
And actually the,
I mean, the Browns River actually coming over the
Oh, yeah.
banks and
Oh, yeah.
flooding along.
oh, definitely. The river's taken different paths.
Yeah.
The river's changed behind like, come out Park Street, around the town line. There's huge islands. You know, the river's changed direction multiple times. Yeah, it's come over the bank.
Well, there's flooding that comes down off the hillside that goes down over the road basically, but that's not the Browns River coming up over its banks.
Hang on just a second. I'll show you the Browns River come over its banks. You want to just see it? Hang on.
And what's the percentage that FEMA gives of the, what's that figure?
12.5%.
Of what?
Of the damage.
Yeah, I guess.
So
The cost
so
of the FEMA estimate.
But how are they getting to 100% if they're replacing the properties?
So that's what he's talking about is,
It's negotiated somehow.
yeah, well, the 12% is more like the road damage and fixing that. Whereas what he's talking about is actually buying out a home, and that's 100%.
That's different, so the 12% is just,
Yeah.
just the town infrastructure.
Yeah,
Okay. So is 12% of the overall damage that's,
I think it has to do with whatever FEMA estimates the cost to be. I don't know if it's actual, you know, if they get reimbursed or if it's, if they get a figure and that's what they have to use. Do you know anything about this part?
No, but, well, Brad said they do an appraisal.
The town does or FEMA does?
Good question.
Somebody does.
So the town ends up on the hook for a lot of the
Cost of the
municipal
road.
cost of roads and stuff like that. I wonder if the state has supplementary money that they kick in. It sounds like.
Yeah, they do. They had a chart on what percentage each has to pay.
Here's the Browns over its bank.
Brad, the 12.5%, how's that figured as far as the overall town damage? Is that?
It's not significant. I don't know. I'd have to study into it. Right here
Yeah,
by the town hall.
Oh, wow.
There's the schoolhouse.
That's a serious.
Oh, well, that's not the Browns River, then that's.
Browns is right here.
Oh, yeah.
That's the Browns River, and it's
serious
over the road.
Yeah.
That's Roaring Brook. That's where the buyout.
Oh, I
is gonna
see,
be.
yeah.
So is this something
Okay.
the town's proactively, like you just, I'm just curious, like,
Yeah, I remember.
it's like if the homeowner wants
When
to,
was this?
Yeah, when was
You remember?
that? Look at-
55. Oh, no, wait a
Look at the
minute.
car out the road.
Oh, no, that was,
Okay.
right before I
so it's
moved
kind of
in.
like if the homeowner wants to pursue
It's
it,
just
they get
55.
notified and then they tell
This
the
was the
town.
neighbor,
or-
so Meadow Lane and that area has been a problem. You know, those homes were built in the 70s, I think, 60s, late 60s, early 70s. People had forgotten about the flood events.
Interesting.
How soon we forget.
Yeah.
55 was huge. So this
Yeah.
is like I was saying, every storm is different. Like this, that's Roaring Brook.
That's different.
This is the Roaring Brook. That's the-
The rental property.
Every flood is different. 55 was a summer event. It got 6 to 8 inches on top of Mansfield. Nobody else got touched. I looked at old,
Yeah.
you can keep that one.
Storm coming in from the west.
Yeah, exactly. Just hung on the mountain and just,
Kept dumping.
Irene came in from the east, so we didn't get it.
Irene came in from the south, right? So it came right up the southeast.
It was over on the other side of the mountain, it really got.
Right, yeah. We didn't get touched.
We got rain,
Not like that.
not like that.
But anyway, so we'll be going through another event of
Interesting.
trying to, or another reiteration of the flood maps. So what happens is, we went to the kickoff meeting, of course, COVID happened. Nothing's really happened or no progress. We should have had a set of preliminary maps that we get to review and make comments on.
What's that?
But they got so sick of me last time, just commenting. I think they just, I don't know. But we're gonna get another crack at it. They've got better data to work with this time. LiDAR data. So,
So the 55 flood, okay, it affected this area here, farther down the brook,
same thing.
it was
Same thing.
same thing,
Yeah.
yeah. So it came up to the.
Especially by Chamberlain's
Sullivan's
and
house.
Chamberlain Sullivan's, yeah, it backs up that water coming down in there, just backs up into the grounds.
Yeah.
You can see where the grounds, I'll show you some historic photos, pretty
No,
easy to
that's
see,
interesting.
where it's been over its banks plenty of times,
Okay.
but not in our lifetime.
From a flooding perspective, like big picture, it sounds like you're saying the number one issue, in your opinion, is kind of culvert infrastructure.
Yep, our bridges, our culverts, our ditches. And if you want to bring it into the planning aspect of this, people probably don't want to hear it, but stop forcing the land to do stuff it can't accept. Stop building these gigantic driveways up in the watershed areas, and it all has to go somewhere.
Steep slopes.
Steep slopes. Just stay off them. It's if our forefathers saw where we built today, they'd be like, "What is the matter with you people?"
Well, they built up there, but
They had a
just
lot more to
smaller.
choose from, no.
They did, but they were on horseback.
Yeah.
And they were trying to stay
I'm
alive.
just giving you grief. They were.
They were up high. You're right about that. They lived in ridiculously high places, but they didn't drive a car there.
No, it astounds me that they even would think to build up there
Yeah, I know.
and how they had to and what
Land was
the rough
cheap.
life. Yeah,
Land was
what a
cheap.
rough life it was.
It was high and safe.
Yeah.
We weren't on the river. We were going to get flooded.
Yeah.
But I just think we need to be mindful of that and I think steep slopes is you can force a land to do just about anything these days. Doesn't mean you should.
Well, we do have steep slope regulations regarding driveways and so on.
And our fire department's
They
getting
weren't
pretty,
going to get more strict on it.
well, our fire department's getting pretty fed up because, Jericho regulates different than Underhill does. We need, if you ask me, we should have a unified road policy
With Jericho. Because of the fire department.
Yeah, what's the purpose of having a road policy, right? For emergency services, right? It's not for anything else.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
but we're
for-
not the ones who regulate the road policy. That's
The
a
road
totally
policy is-
different, totally different.
What?
The road policy there's a different set of regulations for the roads than there is
That's
for
the
zoning.
select board.
No, there isn't. It's all the same. It's on our unified regs. Our unified regs reference the zone or the road.
We haven't even,
We don't do roads.
we don't do the roads.
Select board
Planning
does
board.
that.
I understand that, but it's part of the
Oh,
land use
yeah, yes,
regulations. Don't
yeah.
you folks write those or help write
We
those?
don't do
Yeah,
anything
but
with
we
the roads,
refer to
right?
it.
We
I
do-
disagree.
What do you think
I
we're doing
strongly
with this?
disagree.
No, I mean, the planning commission does
We
not
set
write the road, there's a whole separate set
Road
of
ordinance.
regulations.
Correct.
Now, let's
Correct,
just take a deep
Yeah,
breath.
yeah.
There's a whole separate set of regulations for roads that we have nothing to do with,
Well,
or
we
we haven't
make
ever.
recommendations.
Yeah,
What's
I'm
that?
pretty
We
sure.
make recommendations.
Okay, well, I mean, we
The
haven't.
select board
we-
then says yes or no.
Yeah.
Right,
so
I'm pretty sure you did the 2018. Were you on the planning commission then?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So
We
We
didn't
had
have
to, we had to
anything
bring
to
it
You had
into,
nothing to do with the road ordinance at that time.
No.
well, we had to bring into compliance the plan the town plan and regulations basically with the town road ordinance.
Right.
I mean, there were some sections in the town regulations, I guess it was, that encroached on the authority of the select board.
Right.
So we had
That's
to bring
pretty
it
much
into.
when it all went to the select board.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
around
so-
that time.
Yeah,
You don't need, I'm not asking you to look at the road ordinance, I'm asking you to look at how development is being perceived in regards to steep slopes and regards to length of driveway. You know, things
Steep
like that.
slopes and long driveways.
yeah, we do have something to say about that, right?
You do,
Okay.
Yeah.
you do.
Ditches, culverts, bridges, development, steep slopes and long driveways, and a unified road policy with
With
Jericho.
Jericho, the federal standard is 10%. You know, if you go above, we have an ISO rating for fire. You wonder why your homeowner's insurance is so expensive.
Yeah.
You know, you keep, you know,
But doesn't
building.
that go into the DRB?
Yeah,
No,
it does,
but
but you
it's, they're making their decisions based on the regulations, the bylaws that we're working on, that we're rewriting.
exactly, they're
Because
not
you
bending
also
the,
get into problems like, you know, if you just run a little bit of a Lebanon slope, you avoid a zing, zing, zing back and forth across
possible, yeah.
a slope, basically. So, you know, just being, you know, it's got to be this way is not necessarily the best way.
No, I know, but if you're dealing with that much elevation, should you even be going there to begin with?
Well, I don't think we can say, you know, no building over 1,000 feet, over 700
No, I'm
feet.
saying, but slopes have a lot to do with it, you know?
Yeah, I know.
Steep
yeah.
slopes, steep slopes.
Yeah.
So getting back to.
All right, we'll put that on the list. We all know steep slopes is one of the perennial debating favorites.
Yes.
here on
Long
the
drive.
planning
Well, it was different.
commission.
Well, when the planning commission used to do the subdivisions, it was far more clear to us as we were dealing with it.
Right.
So
Because
just
you
so-
see the real world.
One little side note is Act 250 is thinking about claiming jurisdiction back again on long driveways. Used to
What
be
is
if
a
you,
long driveway?
if you had
What is it?
850, I think it was,
800 feet. I
threw
think.
you in Act
Yeah, I think it
250.
was 800.
And they're thinking about coming back to that.
So it's
That'll put the kibosh on a lot of.
strong discouragement to have a driveway over 850 feet.
Just think about it, 850 feet of ditches. Those 850 feet of ditches have to go to the town road. Town road has to go into another drainage structure, into another set of drainage, into the
Well,
lake.
You know, I think the original rule was, you know, you could do it for a private dwelling, but you could not do it for a subdivision.
Right.
And, you know, once you do it for a private home, well, it's in place. Now we'll do the subdivision.
Well, it still throws it in because the road's over.
Yeah, but you would
But
have
at that
to, you
point,
still
you
would
see-
have to go through,
Doesn't matter if it's existing or not.
yeah, it
You
doesn't
go
matter
through-
if it's already there, if it's one house, and you want to put a subdivision.
I have another
on it.
question
Right, but
for
the
you,
state says,
Brad.
okay,
Yeah,
it's in
Um,
place. That's how we did Chad's Road.
That was a long time ago.
So
Yes, it
our
was.
geomorphic
years,
assessments are
right?
pretty old.
very old, yeah.
And like
What
you
does it
said,
have to do to
that was
it
before we were born, and I'm like, not so much.
to redo that?
The 57, David and I.
Well, I think we
Into a
can
different
benefit from
category.
LiDAR, right?
No, I'm just saying, how does it get done?
Oh, I
and
don't
how
know.
do we?
So that was done by.
Didn't
Stone
live here
and
then,
Cardinal,
but
I
I
think.
was-
So the
Yeah,
town
right.
has
Plan
to
it.
ask for
I
it?
think we probably got it from, this is your thing, David, but I copied the regs, the full regs.
Okay,
So we had those along with your,
okay,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Just passing them out.
Somebody like
And they all
CCRPC
Right.
might,
You would do that with part of their,
Okay.
you would do that, I go,
So I got a question from the start here. Are we talking about just building lots?
Do you
or
have
are we-
enough for us?
Well,
Yeah,
Are we
let's,
talking
let's,
about existing houses on non-conforming?
well,
lots?
that's a perfect segue. Thank you, Roy, to say, David, would you mind doing a quick introduction to what you're talking
Just
about on
finish your
non-conforming lots here and where you are going?
CCRPC,
Because I think Brad,
you have to
we'd go.
I think Brad's passing everything out because he was interested in it, and he's obviously not going to be here next week. So maybe you can give it, well, as far as I know. So maybe you can give us an overview.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, it's, the way it's written in, the regulations is, at the bottom of this list here. And it's, much of it is just taken directly from the, state statutes. And it says, it has, for instance, number 3 under B, at the time of transfer, each water supply and wastewater disposal is functioning in an acceptable manner. This has to do with a non-conforming lot, and I think what the state was trying to deal with was trailer parks with small lots or no lots, and people in trailers wanting a lot, or the owner transferring everything, changing everything. Anyway, the language is very confusing, actually, and misleading. So what I did was I took the actual substance of what is said in A and B and rewrote it. And what you have at the top here is a rewrite of that.
Okay, but my question is,
Yes.
you're talking about existing building lots that are non-conforming to our current bylaws. Is that correct?
Existing lots, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, how many of them are there?
Lots.
Like that, so you're talking about, so you're talking about that's not part of a larger parcel, right?
So, but it gets deeper than that. The definition of, then we start talking about contiguous lots.
Yeah, one across the
Start-
street. I own this here and then I own the lot across the street, which is a separate issue, basically.
No, it's because it's
But you
not,
gotta deal with
because
that, too.
if it comes, this regulation on non-conforming lots say, if it subsequently like that word,
Yeah, right.
subsequently after March of 2011 becomes into common ownership, then it becomes merged. It's non-conforming, right? So say you've got a lot on this side of the road that's 1/2 an acre, and you've got a lot on this side of the road that's 2.5 acres, and you're in a 3-acre zone, and it gets transferred after 2011, those two merge to become a conforming lot.
So you're talking about a theoretical issue that does exist in our town? Like
Exists
lots,
all over
like
the place.
how many, like 20?
I have one
or-
right now.
At your house?
No, I have one right now that I'm asked to give an opinion on, whether they can build on it or not. And I think the reason I bring this up is having contiguous go through the town right of way is ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Wait,
So you're
lost me
saying
on
that-
What does that mean? You
You
have
gotta go back to, we started off on the wrong foot, David, I think.
No, that's okay. We do have to deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean, non-conforming lots exist, and the question is, can they be built on or can they not be built on? What constitutes a non-conforming lot? And so the idea of merging lots, that was not in existence before March 2nd, 2011. There was you didn't merge lots. If you had two separate.
Yeah, right, there were two separate lots.
Right.
But if you buy the lot next door to your house, it becomes one parcel, basically.
After
2011, right,
2011.
exactly. I understand.
Beforehand.
Only if it was non-conforming. If you had a conforming piece of property and a house, and you bought the neighboring lot, that's still a separate lot.
Yeah, I got
But
it.
if you were non-conforming, now they merge for better conformity.
Yeah.
You may not reach conformity, but you have better conformity.
Right.
That's the idea.
That's the idea, right. So
And that's as long as one of the two lots is non-conforming.
Exactly. Otherwise, it doesn't even fall under this non-conforming law.
Sorry, Dave.
Okay.
No, it's all good.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's tricky because if somebody's names switch a little bit, the ownership is not the same.
Oh, you mean, so if I own it and I change it to my
Affiliated, that's
trust,
covered.
does it
Does
merge?
now?
If you're, well, it says, if you,
bought
Well,
it
I don't know, I was,
Uh-huh.
okay.
if it's,
But in the
that's another
past, it
little issue.
didn't. Yeah, there were a whole lot of little.
So we always combine like contiguous
20
lots,
and
and contiguous is another thing we're gonna look at. But contiguous lots are always joined for taxation,
For
right?
taxation.
Not
That's, yeah.
necessarily for conveyance, but for taxation, they're shown as one. right? So if you look at the parcel map, hey, I've got 3 lots here, but it shows as 1. Well, because they're all contiguous and they're all under common ownership.
Contiguous even if it is across the road.
No,
That's different.
that's different.
Okay.
We put a different code on that, but go ahead. Sorry.
Well, we have to, okay. All right, so I think the state actually, well, anyway, our regulations indicate that if you own a separate, you own a non-conforming lot and you keep that same configuration and it hasn't been changed any, that can be a building lot, basically.
Well, let's look back at the applicability that I gave. So if you go back on the very first page of what I gave you, application. This is some of the most important things to read, and Sandy was already there. But page 2, C. So read that first paragraph, because that's very important to this whole thing.
So,
Wait, you're on page 38.
Page 2. Page 2.
2 of the Article 1.
Not David's thing, but
Yeah.
that
Articles.
Article 1, okay.
Article 1, page 2.
C.
See the top paragraph.
Yep.
So read that. So it's basically, you can't take a grab at something that was existing before the regulations came into effect.
Right.
Right? So it's continued, or it's allowed to exist. All right, so it's just an important thing to put in your head.
It's allowed to exist even if it's under the same ownership?
Right, it's allowed to exist, and then you get back into the non-conforming lot that David's
Yeah.
gonna explain.
Yeah.
If after 2011, it goes into different ownership, then we're gonna say it's gonna merge. The 2 pieces are gonna merge, if one lot is non-conforming.
So this is interpreted to mean when it says changes or alterations to pre-existing subdivision structures or uses, so the fact that it hasn't been developed yet doesn't mean it can't be developed.
That's right.
Okay.
So, but there are some restrictions now on a non-conforming lot. And they're listed, 1 through 5, basically. And this follows state regulations also. Annotated statute, something or other. So the lot, the configuration, can't change in the lot. If you add, a little section of land to it, you've got a new bounds and meets on the property. Okay, you're out of the picture at that point. You can't treat that as a non-conforming lot if you change it in any way. So it carries through from before 2011 to after 2011 and on. It's okay as a developable lot.
As long as it didn't get conveyed,
Yeah.
as long as it didn't get reconveyed.
What do you mean reconveyed? Like sold?
Yeah.
Sold,
Yeah, okay.
or not conveyed. Conveyed isn't
I
necessarily a
don't-
sale.
No,
Well,
I don't
mean,
know that.
Just keep it,
Transfer of ownership.
okay.
Yeah, right. Unchanged in the same legal configuration. Well, I'm not sure if that includes ownership, but
I would say so.
yes?
Yeah.
Okay, legal configuration,
that's
meaning not
that's-
only ownership, but also the meets and bounds.
Yeah, that's the meaning of it, I think, yeah. It's
Both
legally,
those things.
right, it's all of
Okay.
those things.
Okay, the lot can't be any less than 1/8 of an acre.
Makes sense.
And the minimum width or depth is not less than 40 feet. So, the lot has sufficient wastewater and capacity and potable water as documented by a permit issued by the state. The old language talks about operating water systems and this, it doesn't, it seems extraneous. So as long as it's documented that it has capacity for a wastewater system and potable water, that covers it. And then the lot, the development is otherwise in conformance with the district regulations. So everything else in the lot has to follow the district regulations. Now setbacks, on a 40-foot wide parcel would be almost impossible to with the district regulations. So the farther on down.
Hey, David, sorry, before we go too far, just that number 1,
Yes.
wouldn't we need to keep that? Isn't that saying that you're not making it more non-conforming? Like the lots are conveyed in their pre-existing non-conforming
He's
configuration.
looking at the copy I gave.
Oh, I'm sorry, should we have kept number 1 from the old draft though, where it says the lots are conveyed in their, because isn't that saying you can't make it more non-conforming? Like I can't take the 2.5 and sell off 1.5 of it. Is that what that's saying? Basically, you can't make it more non-conforming. You can't make it smaller.
Right.
I'm saying, should we have, do we need to keep
This
number
is,
1?
no, I think you're getting a little confused. This is the caveats for it being able to be developed,
Right,
a non-conforming lot to be developed.
right. But isn't that what David's trying to shrink? Isn't
Well, I
David
think I'm
trying to
covering
shrink
it.
all that down into this?
I think he's
Yeah.
trying to, yeah, go ahead.
But the lot has continued unchanged in the same legal configuration as
Oh, so you
before.
think that sentence covers?
I think it covers
that
it.
it's not been reduced in
Yeah.
size?
Yeah,
Okay,
so.
yeah.
Same
Okay.
configuration.
Sorry, yep.
No, that's okay. Good. But now, as far as setbacks go, that's covered in, let's see.
Covered in conditional use review.
No,
of a
no, it's covered,
non-conforming lot.
it's, no, but, okay. It's covered in
Setbacks in a
C.
non-conforming
It's covered
lot
in
you're
C,
talking about.
basically. Where C, which I'm recommending we keep that as is, it says the Development Review Board may reduce applicable minimum district surface water and wetland setback requirements by no more than 50%, subject to conditional use review under section 5.4 and waiver provisions under section 5.5, as necessary to allow for development of a pre-existing non-conforming lot.
Mm-hmm.
If the DRB determines the lot cannot be otherwise developed in conformance with these regulations. So
And D is also important.
D is also important, right?
Can I just ask, on C,
Mhm.
a lot of this language that doesn't sink into me, so if you have this small lot and, it's not gonna meet the distance for surface water setback,
Mhm.
but it will meet half of the distance, then it's okay? Is that what that 50% is saying?
You can only waive up to 50% of whatever our regulation is. So if there's a
Okay.
50-foot setback off the boundary line, you could only reduce that by 25 feet.
Okay,
Same
Got it.
goes with the surface water. The caveat there is you can't reduce a wetland setback. The only one we could contemplate reducing is the class 3 25-foot setback that we have. Class 2 and 1 wetlands are not under this, any down control.
so that shouldn't even be in here then.
Well, wetland is a little pertinent because we have a setback for, that's something you might want to think about just getting rid of, the class 3 setback. Used to be in the day, we had a 100-foot setback on all wetlands. Class 1, 2, 3, right, 100 feet.
I think so, yeah.
And then we said, okay, this is crazy. The state only regulates to 50 feet and they have jurisdiction on wetlands. So we went to 50 feet. Class 3, you can build right up to the edge of it, or you can even get a general permit to impact up to 3,500 square feet of it.
From the state.
Right.
No, class 3 is town regulated.
No, I know, but it's also regulated by the Army Corps of Engineers. So, but I'm saying if we just don't, you could take that out altogether, possibly, but you'd have to also take it out of your surface water section. Either leave it in, surface water is 25 feet, class 3, 25 feet buffer. The state doesn't have a buffer for class 3 unless they deem it necessary.
So you're saying we could take it out because it's more restrictive than the state, if I understand what you're saying.
Right, and more, possibly more restrictive than the Army Corps of Engineers. So,
Well, that's something we should look into, maybe incorporate that in some.
but I think the 50% is reasonable.
Mhm.
You know, if you've got this postage stamp of a lot,
And David's saying we would keep all of C, D, and E as in their current forms, right? You're only
Yeah.
touching A and B.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you give me a real life example of what a lot in town that we're talking about?
sure, I'll give you multiple
Yeah,
examples.
just give
I
me
can
one.
go
I
on
just
and
want
on.
one.
Harvey Road,
Harvey Road.
Harvey
okay.
Road,
Yeah,
okay, right up on top of the hill.
yeah.
Lot, pre-existing lot in existence that doesn't meet the frontage requirement is
Doesn't have enough road
3,000
frontage.
feet long. You know,
How
it's
many?
a long barrel,
Oh, okay,
shotgun barrel lot, right?
There's nothing
Doesn't-
on it now. It's a blank, empty lot.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, there used to be a house on it. Okay, there used to be a house on it. The house was torn down, and then they had to come back in because they're a non-conforming lot. Didn't meet the frontage requirement.
They tore it down recently,
Now, a while ago, yeah.
like 3 or
Fairly
4
recent.
years ago. This
Right,
is- Yeah,
exactly.
I know exactly.
The
where you're at.
particulars don't matter, but it's a
Okay.
non-conforming lot.
Yeah.
So then, okay, well, we shouldn't have tore that down, really, probably.
Should have just
Without getting
replaced it.
approval, you
Yeah.
could have replaced it,
Yeah.
which you can without a permit.
Right.
Our regulations say you can, if a structure is damaged, either by fire or just rot or whatever, you have 3 years, you can reconstruct it in the same configuration, the same
Yeah.
footprint, same
Okay,
exact
so
thing,
that's-
same exact thing
Yeah.
with no permit.
Right.
However, you want to change, everybody wants to
Yeah,
change
that's a
something,
separate,
right?
But, so
this person came in front of the development review board. They used this very thing that David's running through. They waived the side yard setback because it's impossible to meet. And the DRB waived the side yard setback. I think it's 75 feet to 38.5 or something.
okay.
So
So that would have been a conditional use situation to begin with.
no, it was a non-conforming lot. It wouldn't have fallen into conditional use if it were not a non-conforming lot.
Okay.
We have many non-conforming lots here. Not
But-
everything was created when subdivision regulations.
But
were
are
in
those
place.
non-conforming lots already have buildings on them?
Not necessarily,
There
no.
might be a few out there.
I can give you another example. Blakey Road. Blakey Road, person has, and this is a little different because it's a different chain of title, but they acquired this land in the 70s, made up of 2 parcels. One, a non-conforming lot, an acre lot with a house on one side of the road, 4 acres on the other side of the road. Okay,
And they're in the 3 acre zone or the?
they're in a 3 acre zone.
Okay.
So non-conforming lot with a house on one side, 4 acres on the other side of the road. However, the caveat there is 2 different chains of title. These were separate lots way, way back in existence. The highway divides them, but if you look at the contiguous language, it might lead you to believe that, that they might merge across the road. However, they haven't, they're still unchanged before 2011, or they were in existence before 2011 and in existence long before that, and they're in their unchanged state. So in my opinion, I'm going to give an opinion that lot on the other side of the road, the 4 acre lot, it meets the frontage requirements, it meets the zoning, it can be developed.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's,
Yeah, but-
because any lot in town that's on the other side of the road is.
However, but if it was conveyed, say deeded it to someone else, the same land that he bought, right, to someone else, sells it to you tomorrow, and it's made up of 2 lots. Now our regs say they become merged through the right of way of the road.
So that's,
I
in-
thought-
that's in,
I thought that
that's
they
in
were
the,
separate lots if
that's in the
divided by the
definitions
road, but
of
that's,
a contiguous,
You talk about contiguous on your last page.
okay.
yeah, so,
There's a lot of problems with the contiguous definition, I think.
yeah, right. I mean, that's, this is in what Brad put together there, contiguous lands. So the parcel of land contained within a single unbroken parcel boundary, or two or more parcels which share a common parcel boundary
Oh, it's
or
crystal clear.
point, you know, and Brad mentions that.
Yeah.
In your
Page
example, it's crystal
194.
clear to be merged, whether or not you want.
Page
Page
194.
Well,
194.
because they haven't been conveyed.
No, but
The
in your,
statutes.
Post 2011,
Yeah.
like they got sold
Yeah.
post
Yep.
2011.
194
So the first part there,
of this,
the-
of the statutes.
Okay.
the first part there, contiguous land, so a parcel of land contained within a single unbroken parcel boundary. So I think what that's referring to is an island. Think about an island lot inside of another lot, right? So, and we have some of those.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I call them
Somebody
island
else
lots.
owns the
No,
other
say
one?
it could be a parcel of land contained within a single unbroken parcel boundary. So say you have a square and there's a little square in the middle and the same people own it. Yep, you got it. That's contiguous. I don't know why they need to define it that way.
They exist
Why does
out
it
there.
need to
Yeah.
exist?
I don't know. Or two or more parcels which share a common parcel boundary or point. A lot cannot be contiguous if it's only connected by one point. A point is,
Yeah, point is, right.
has no defined
Yeah,
area,
right.
has no
Geometry
defined area.
says a point has no dimension.
So if you have, the perfect is you looking at the old original town lines. You get a lot here and you get a lot here.
Contiguous.
Joined by
Under
one.
this.
They can't be.
Under this, they are.
I know, but they physically can't
Yeah,
be.
so it's
You can't.
wrong. We got to take that point
It's
out.
totally wrong.
Yeah.
It needs to go.
A point has no dimension.
Right.
So it should just say share a common parcel boundary.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then it goes on, where one or more existing road rights of way bisect an existing parcel, the rights of way may be considered a boundary dividing the parcel into two or more lots only if all portions of the parcel divided by the rights of way meet the minimum lot size requirement for the district in which they are located.
Okay.
So
So
now
that's just, yeah, I get that now. So
That
like
means-
there's a couple lots one on River Road and one
Yeah.
right by the school there where the road bisects the
Mhm,
lot.
yeah,
And the other lot across the street is not big enough for that district. You cannot develop that lot.
Right.
Is that correct? Is that how I
that's the way
understand
it's
that?
written here, but
Right, yeah.
Brad's pointing out that, you know, as far as state highways go and so on, the road running through two parcels makes them separate.
Yeah, but so even, so that,
So maybe we should
It's
do away
something that
with
should be
this.
looked at. I'm saying something that should be looked at. Because, yeah, the road, and we came to that conclusion. We had a parcel of land on Route 15, okay? Another non-conforming lot. And we determined, well, Route 15 is a little different, right? Because the state has jurisdiction on it. But how can you, in this particular situation, there's a swamp involved. So how can you, and the attorney and I talked about it, it's like, how can you enjoy this parcel as one piece of land when you have to go through a swamp, across the state highway, to get to the other land, right?
Mm.
It makes no sense for it to be contiguous. It's something to think about. I do think
The point, get rid of that.
would definitely get rid of the point
Yeah.
because it's not possible.
So, okay, so to think about whether we should have rights of way bisecting, you know, maybe we want to talk about that a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to understand it a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'll
you've got
give you,
Walbrook. Now, for instance, Lee owns a house on Walbrook there.
Yep,
She
I know
also
where she
owns a
lives.
lot across the Walbrook
road,
Lane right of way.
Oh, where the mailboxes are, basically. on the other side
Yeah.
across the Murray House? Okay.
Well, yeah, across from Wabrook
Pretty little.
Just a-
down, no, it's pretty big, actually. It's on the right as you go all the way down to the river. right?
Yeah.
All that land on the
Oh,
right.
okay, okay.
All that land on the right.
Got
There's
it.
2 parcels there, actually, I think, but,
Yeah.
so, you know, the way it's written here, they
That's
are
all
joined,
contiguous.
basically.
Yeah.
So we get rid of the, right of way dividing them.
That's,
Then they
that's,
would be.
I
separate
I-
parcels.
I have a hunch that was a town road anyway, but that's besides the point.
So the practical
You mean
application,
the road down to,
Wabrook, yeah.
Yeah.
But
so the practical application here is really, I have to think about it to understand it, but it has more to do with like, it would have more to do with, it goes way beyond non-conforming lots, because it goes into whether you would have to subdivide that land, or if it's already
ready
subdivided.
subdivided, exactly. So in the
So it's
state's
less
mind-
about non-conforming
Well,
lots. and so on. It touches on it, but it seems like the bigger impact might be.
I think it's crazy to try to make a lot more conforming by adding land that's across the road. That makes no
Right.
sense to me.
Specific to non-conforming.
If it's contiguous on the same side of the road, and now you have say you have a existing 1 acre
Less
parcel, and now all of a
non-conforming.
sudden I get a 3 acre lot, well, yeah, that makes sense. Let's merge it, and now it's conforming.
or
But-
more conforming.
Or more conforming, but let's not add, you can't, how can you enjoy the property as
Yeah,
one
totally.
with a town highway running right through it? However, some land, well, in this case, as I said, the title is easily traceable that was came out of a separate farm, separate piece of property on one side of the road. Same with the other, separate title source. So that makes it even stronger that they're separate. However, there are some cases where you might have a big 50-acre piece that's been that way forever and just happens to be a town highway. So now it isn't necessarily separate title. It just happens to be a 50-acre lot where a town highway's running through. So then what do you do?
Right, so
Do whatever you can within the regulations.
Well, right, but we're saying that if you read this contiguous definition, then I think you got into it with your subdivision, Carol, remember? The land on
Because
the
of-
other side.
Because of the Casey's Hill.
Right.
But now,
I mean, they were all conforming lots, so it was
It's the
not-
difference, yeah.
I mean,
I guess non-conforming's where,
that's where the problem is,
That's where the-
because it was, as you were using, a really good example of enjoying your land.
Yeah.
Too.
So the question of the day really is, okay, now I understand better. The question of the day really is solely in the non-conforming lots, saying for next
It is.
meeting, it's when they're across the road from each other, should they merge
right,
or no? Merge.
because it's really not clear and it's hard to make decisions. There's another case with Wolcott, has a boundary line adjustment up on Mountain Road. Nobody can make a decision on it because there's non-conforming aspects of it. You have a town highway, certainly make it a lot clearer
So
if
you're,
we didn't cross the town highway boundary to make a lot more conforming.
But so am I right, Brad, back in when I was a lister? If the property was across the road, it didn't matter,
Right, it had a separate code because it was.
because it was not, I mean,
We had a special, we
It
had
was,
special-
we, for taxation purposes,
joined it,
joined, but not across the road.
right,
That was a separate,
separate piece.
so that, there's a lot of history that kind of makes everything a little murky,
yeah,
because all those small adjoining lots on one side of the road were contiguous for taxation purposes. You could have the same ownership across the
and
road,
they're not.
and they're not. So that property owner is not getting the same tax benefit as the other.
Huh.
So it's really,
If you search long enough, if it were in a town highway situation, if you search long enough back into the records, you're probably gonna find where it came from a different title source anyway.
Hmm.
Somehow someone said, 100 years ago, Fred, I'll sell you this land across the road.
Right.
Okay. And then he acquires that and then he sells the whole thing to somebody else. Right. And they sell it to somebody else, and they sell it to somebody else.
And then the
So you
road
have to-
moves.
You have to keep going back and back to see, oh, no, wait a minute, it was a separate title.
Okay.
Now,
But
there's another slight issue here on the A1, where I say the lot has continued unchanged in the same legal configuration as before March 2nd. Okay, so somebody bought a lot back in 2010, and it's next to that person's other non-conforming lot. Now, the way I understand it, that person owning those two lots could sell one of those lots as a developable property, and that would change the ownership of it, but it would still be able to be developed. And that would not change the configuration of it in the meets and bounds.
right, can I see something?
So I think.
So it goes back to this.
That's what's intended, actually, that this is a viable lot, and it can be sold as a viable lot,
Well, it goes back
not
to,
just by the owner that had it at that point.
yeah, all land subdivision uses and structures legally in existence as of the effective date of these regulations, 2011, are allowed to continue.
Right.
So that would make reasonable sense that, yes, I have this non-conforming lot, and if it's pre-existing,
Yeah.
then you would be able to sell it, but you couldn't sell it. The trick is you'd have to sell it as is, and there's no guarantee you could develop it. Right?
Well,
Because you'd be into if you tried to develop it before you sold it, then you'd have to go to a conditional use hearing, right?
No, if the lot is sold in its original configuration.
Right.
Meets and bounds and so on, to somebody that is not related or so
A
on.
non-conforming lot.
It's a non-conforming lot, then you can develop it as long as it meets, it's not the rest of these conditions.
Well, that's not
basically.
true. It still has to have wastewater capacity.
Yeah, right. Well,
Right.
that's part of the conditions here. That the lot has sufficient wastewater capacity and potable water as documented by a permit issued by the state. It does have to have that.
So what were you saying, David?
I'm saying that if,
Yeah, but the
If-
question is, I think that needs to be more clear, because is that permit issued by the state, is that before 2011 or after? So you get down into this
Oh.
muddy stuff
it's,
here. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The lot has
No, we're
sufficient
talking
wastewater.
about a lot that
Okay.
is after the date of 2011.
But it
What
says
is
the
a lot?
lot has sufficient wastewater capacity and
Right.
potable water as documented by a permit issued by the state.
This is after 2012 and you want to do something with it. So
Yeah, but it won't have a permit. That's what I'm saying.
it can be developed if you get a permit.
Brad is saying that it has to have a pre-existing permit of
Yeah, or is
wastewater.
it- I'm asking
Yeah, no,
you if that's what you're saying.
No, I don't
Well,
think it
that's the
needs
way
a pre.
you could read it that way. I think.
Okay, well, maybe,
You know what I'm saying? If you just read it for what it was,
no,
Maybe
I think it's
develop-
okay. I think it's covered all right.
maybe
Any lot
develop,
legally in existence before the effective date of March 2nd, 2011 of the regulation may be developed if it conforms to the following conditions. This is after the date, basically.
I'd read it how David reads it, but maybe it's all worth us thinking about it.
it's
Yeah.
worth thinking about and being very,
Yeah.
very, very
Yeah.
clear.
No, I
Yeah,
get
the
I get
language is very important. And,
It is.
has to- Because
The lot has continued unchanged in the same legal configuration. So a state
Yeah,
permit is a
may
legal,
not- Legal may not be the right word.
right, a state permit is a legal thing, you
Wow.
know?
Well, this is
Lot
just
has-
configuration. Maybe we should take out.
How about the lot has the capacity to support a wastewater?
That's what it said.
No, it
Lot
says
has
the lot has
sufficient
sufficient
wastewater
wastewater capacity
capacity.
as documented by a
As
permit.
documented by the permit.
That's what I
Well,
don't
just
like.
take the document part out and just say, sufficient potable water.
And then forget as documented by a permit issued by the state.
Well,
And just say issued by the state.
well, when you want to go ahead and develop the lot,
No, I
the
understand.
question will come and say, well,
We're gonna need
do you
to
have
have
this wastewater and potable water? No, okay, so we get the state in and we'll get a permit indicating it does have sufficient wastewater
Yeah.
capacity
You gotta-
and potable water. At that point, you can start to move ahead, basically. You can't move ahead until you get that.
It's ambiguous though. It's ambiguous.
How is it? I don't,
The permit clause, it's just not clear if it's, you need to have it now or you need to get it.
That's right. That's what I'm
Yeah.
struggling
Right.
with a little bit.
Yes, I think you just like you said, cross that out somehow.
all right.
people have
Has
spoken
is the
there.
wrong word.
Well, it's just.
Maybe has is the wrong word. What has or-
Develop if it conforms to all the following conditions. I get your point, only because I'm sitting here having this conversation. But if I were out, in the trenches trying to read this,
It's
what
not
the
a-
hell they meant.
No, it's not a simple situation, so.
I think if you got rid of the permit, because it clouds the thing, is like, do I need the permit before I sell the lot? Do I need it after?
Well, I think you're
Obviously, you need it to develop it,
right.
but the question is,
Mhm.
it might lead,
Conveyance, do you
it might
need it?
lead you to believe that you should have had a permit before you conveyed it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What if you say
Yes.
the potable water, as determined by the state and get rid of as documented by a permit? And just say
I
as determined by the state.
I think the
Or
lot
just
has
the-
sufficient wastewater and potable water capacity, period.
Okay, I can go along with that, yeah. And then it's up to the
Right.
owner to prove it,
Right.
so.
I mean, nobody can develop anything. We're not gonna give
Yeah.
anybody
I
a
know.
building permit unless it's
Okay.
a state.
They're ultimately gonna have to get it from the state anyways.
Right. But it just clouds the issue a little bit.
Yeah, okay,
Do you need it? When do you need it?
yeah, okay. Just leave it as a, yes, okay, I like
The
that.
development is otherwise in
Simpler.
conformance with the district regulations.
And we get rid of the word legal,
Well, I think
same
that's,
configuration. That's what we're looking at, is basically the meets and bounds of the.
yeah, but the legal configuration is the ownership too.
Good point.
The development is otherwise, what's the point of 5?
Yeah.
But,
It wouldn't
then
be.
then you have the problem of, the owner sells the lot to somebody else, and somebody else wants to develop it. Now, that person has a lot that does not have the same legal configuration that the previous, the guy who bought it before 2011.
Right.
I think we should revisit this.
Oh, no question.
I think
Yeah, thank
I think
you.
it's-
Yeah, so why don't we do this?
Sleep on it, maybe.
Well, yeah, let's do, if
I'll
you,
read it.
Yeah.
why don't we all read it with
I'm
a
not sure it
fresh,
makes
let's
sense.
all read it with a fresh mind and try to wrap it up next meeting.
Sounds good.
Is there anything for climate on next meeting? Think
I
about the
don't know.
agenda.
I'm
I
gonna
was
think about that, but,
Ask someone from the state to comply.
That would be great.
well,
Can you
for
do me a
instance,
favor? Can you tell me if you
it
can't?
doesn't mean that you can
I'm gonna
do
slide
any
it
kind
back
of development. You can't
next
put
meeting. So next meeting I'm gonna do
a ski area or something.
Well, that's gonna be dictated by
1 hour
the zoning.
state river
That's
corridors,
gonna be
30
dictated by
minutes
the
David
permit,
non-compliant.
right? What you
Okay.
can do and what you can't do.
Yeah, but this is,
When's
this
the
is an
next
exception
meeting?
in any case.
It is the first
Yeah.
week, it's like the 3rd or something like that.
Okay, I'll be here.
Yeah, and I am gonna zoom in for the next one because I'll be in Chicago, so if you don't mind, right,
No.
but I'm gonna come, I'll just be on the screen.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Once you got somebody to run the technical side of things.
Yeah, I think, numerous people know how to log in, right?
I'll
I
be
think-
here.
Numerous
No,
people,
no.
not me.
I think you know how to log into the
I
computer,
do,
right?
the problem is if we have to show slides, that something happens where we can see it here, but people online
Can't
can't
see it. I think there's a setting here in the share thing. See where it says screen share. And then I think,
Boris is super good at doing
Yeah,
it. He's
Boris
here.
was good.
Hope he's here.
It's that younger group, you know?
Wasn't
Wait,
Boris,
I had
didn't
it
Boris
open
have like an IT
before.
company or something like that?
He
I thought he did
was a
something with
video,
Didn't he do
Special
something with
effects video.
technology? Okay.
Is that what
special
it is?
effects video.
Yeah, of course
I think
not.
he's in-
Technology, video. All right, well, we'll sort that out before, next meeting. If Boris is not coming, hopefully Boris is coming, if otherwise we'll. Okay, anything else? If not,
So we
can
should, come back to.
Yeah, oh yeah, sorry, I was not
That's
gonna
okay,
say.
so we'll come back to this.
So I was gonna allocate 30 minutes in the next meeting to try to wrap up non-conforming
Yeah,
lots.
okay.
Do you think that's
Yes,
adequate? Okay.
and we'll try and think
Well,
about,
Maybe 45.
45? Well, maybe I'll go 45,
Yeah, I
45.
think 45.
Yeah.
Because
'Cause I
Sandy
think
was,
It's gonna be challenging.
okay, 45, 45. Okay, got
and
it.
we want to consider the road division issue as part of it.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for coming, Brett.
Yeah,
Sure,
thanks.
yeah, yeah.
That was great, Brad,
Got a
thank
vote
you.
to adjourn.
Oh yeah, that was my next, sorry. We're at, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Carolyn, second. Tim, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.